Tyson Summers completed the final set of papers provided by Jason, which were essential for Jason's oversight of a particular portfolio, one of the largest under Tyson's management. This portfolio included the assets of Wilson Willie Graves, a billionaire investor and business mogul. Willie excelled in leveraging his wealth for aggressive takeovers, purchasing shares to dominate companies. Upon achieving his goals, Willie's approach involved quickly selling off assets to boost the value of his investments, often involving other reliable partners, regardless of any potential harm to others. As Willie's attorney and legal advisor, Tyson effectively preserved Wilson's integrity and protected him from legal issues with the SEC and other federal authorities who monitored individuals like Graves. This protection allowed Willie to accumulate more wealth, benefiting Summers, Reinhardt, and Jason. Jason also progressed in handling portfolios for other clients, striving to achieve complete control within the next 2 weeks, a process that involved a 3-month period of transitioning all of Tyson's clients, except his select few. Only Jason, Stacy, Reinhardt, and Clayton Hayes knew about Tyson's upcoming retirement. Tyson reminded himself again that it was time to step back and prioritize personal life. As one of the original founders of the firm, along with Stacy and Clay, they had expanded it from a modest office law firm into one of the most significant and influential in Columbus, Ohio. Yet, this success had strained Tyson's personal life, affecting his marriage to Bridget and their family. Despite recently celebrating their 20th wedding anniversary, Tyson noted that Bridget's lack of interest in their romantic life was a major problem. While Tyson remained keen on intimacy, Bridget considered her diminished desire as a temporary issue, vowing to speak with her doctor at her upcoming appointment. Their romantic life had not improved for almost a year, and Tyson, frustrated, decided to let the matter rest without further discussion. The root of his worry was Bridget's frequent returns to her hometown of Mansfield, Ohio. She justified these trips by her mother's worsening health and the need to support her sister, Bianca, who was single and lived there. Both still resided in Mansfield, and Bridget, visiting to assist her sister, felt it was the least she could do to provide Bianca with some relief and leisure. These visits had begun 6 months earlier and now occurred bi-weekly, with Bridget leaving on Thursday morning and returning late Sunday night, always making sure to call every evening at 9, keeping her cell phone within reach. However, this schedule meant Tyson was left alone for 3 or 4 days every other week, a situation he increasingly resented. Bridget had departed that morning for her most recent trip, leaving Tyson on his own once more. Despite his disappointment, he revealed to Bridget that he was planning a significant surprise, ready in a few weeks. He even hinted at Stacy's involvement, hoping to spark her curiosity or perhaps jealousy, which might encourage her to stay and discover the secret. Bridget showed little interest, and Tyson, unsurprised, let it go and allowed her to continue packing. After the usual farewells, Tyson headed to work, knowing she would leave within the hour. Later that day, Tyson closed his office, conversed with Rachel, his secretary, and proceeded down the carpeted hallway to Stacy's office for a chat before heading home. He knocked once and pushed the door open, a practice all partners were accustomed to during his unannounced visits. Tyson greeted Stacy and proposed they call it a day, offering to buy her a drink. Stacy expressed her hesitation to return to an empty house. Another colleague, Roger, was waiting for her as they planned to attend their son's school play, where Roger Jr. starred as the lead in Pirates of Doom. Tyson playfully joked with Stacy about the play, but acknowledged that parents often have a favorable bias towards their children's performances. Stacy chuckled and agreed. At 46, happily wed for a decade, she updated Tyson on the progress of their project and opted to proceed without Jason's help, assuring that everything was on track. Concerned about Tyson's forthcoming retirement, Stacy voiced her desire to persuade him to reconsider, noting his pivotal role in the company's achievements. Tyson appreciated Stacy's efforts and reassured her that she, along with Clay and the newer team members, would continue to thrive. He commended the commitment of the younger staff, specifically mentioning Jason and considering a future partnership for Alice Chambers. Stacy showed her appreciation for Jason and Alice, adding that Raj would join the upcoming gathering. Tyson greeted Raj and bid Stacy goodnight, planning to see her the following day. Tyson drove to his sizable home in the Columbus suburbs, located on a 5-acre plot and featuring over 5,000 square feet. The property boasted a hot tub flowing into a swimming pool, a cabana, 2 tennis courts, and an expansive garden adorned with flowers and shrubs that beautified the area through summer and fall. With the kids moved out, Bridget had dismissed the cook and maid, leaving the house largely unoccupied. Acknowledging its excessive size for just the two of them, Bridget conceded they hadn't fully committed to the property, but suggested they consider downsizing soon, perhaps after a couple more years. Tyson parked in the 4-car garage and entered the kitchen, where he heated a frozen meal in the microwave before changing into comfortable attire for the evening. Descending the stairs, he heard the landline ring, hoping it pertained to one of his advertisements, as it was too early for Bridget to call. Pleased to discuss his boat, a 32-foot powered sailboat moored at Lake Erie during the summer and fall and stored at a nearby facility off-season, Tyson finalized a sale after a promising conversation with an individual who had tested the boat, facilitated by a marina owner. They agreed on a cashier's check sent to a specified P.O. box. Once received, the boat's title would be accessible at the marina. The buyer had inspected the title during a trial outing, and all was in order. Bridget, who had never enjoyed the boat and hadn't joined Tyson on it for years, would be glad to hear it was sold. With the Jaguar also promised to a successful bidder, Tyson had little left to worry about. In 2 weeks, all would be set for his retirement. Although the house might take time to sell, by then Tyson and Bridget would be settled in a smaller bungalow, prepared for viewings. He had already transported some furniture there, and any additional items could be bought as needed. Tyson listlessly ate his frozen dinner and chose to unwind with some undemanding television and snacks, taking a cold bottle of Miller Lite to the entertainment room. He briefly watched an adult film, but quickly grew disenchanted by the unimaginative and repetitive scenes, which only aimed for superficial excitement without creativity, leaving Tyson unengaged and disinterested in further personal activities. At 9 p.m., Bridget called, and Tyson inquired if she had faced any problems during her trip. Bridget confirmed that her journey was smooth and mentioned her mother's slight improvement, although her sister Bianca was feeling overwhelmed. She considered staying an extra day, asking if Tyson was all right with that. Despite a hint of unease, Tyson dismissed his discomfort and consented, advising Bridget to do what she felt was best. He mentioned he might stay at work longer since he felt lonely without her, and also asked about her plans for Monday, noting she hadn't taken much with her. Bridget mentioned that she had left some items behind and assured Tyson that she would manage fine. She then brought up the surprise he had hinted at earlier, showing a bit of curiosity about it. Tyson, somewhat taken aback by her interest, informed her that everything was progressing well, with Stacy nearly finished with her part and everything else already arranged. Bridget promised to call him the following night and said goodnight, ending the call with a simple "I love you." Tyson noticed that Bridget seemed keen to conclude the call swiftly, and that she responded to his "I love you" with nothing more than a good night. Despite this, he smiled, attributing her brief endings to her likely preoccupations with her mother. Tyson then considered Bridget's family dynamics, recognizing the dysfunction and his own dislike for her mother and sister, Bianca, whose divorce due to infidelity compounded his worries. Thus, his solitary weekend continued. Tyson thought to himself about how to fill his time. He phoned his children and spoke with them for over an hour, reminding them of his request for them to visit in 2 weeks. Afterwards, he allowed himself to relax, eventually falling asleep on the couch. He woke in the middle of the night with a stiff neck, went to bed, and slept soundly, a welcome reprieve since his recent dreams had been disturbing. The next 2 weeks unfolded typically, with Tyson dedicated to closing all his cases and making sure Jason was thoroughly briefed on them. He spent much of that second week contacting his clients to inform them of his impending retirement. Most clients were supportive and open to working with Jason, although a few sought reassurances from either Stacy or Clayton, and Tyson promptly arranged for those contacts. By the final Thursday, when Bridget left for Mansfield, Tyson had successfully kept his impending retirement hidden from her, as she seldom inquired about his work anymore, making it easier to keep secrets. Moreover, she had forgotten about the surprise, and Tyson chose not to mention it again before she departed. He planned to bring it up on Sunday morning when she called to say she was leaving, particularly if she opted to extend her stay again. Regardless of her decision, Tyson was ready. Friday marked Tyson's last day at work, filled with bustling activity. Collaborating with Rachel, they cleaned the house and transferred paper files to Jason. After making a few additional phone calls, Tyson instructed Rachel to direct all his new calls to Jason, aligning with his transition plan. Having appointed Jason as secretary, Rachel was accustomed to working with him, Tyson's final task was instructing Stacy to initiate certain procedures, and she confirmed everything was set, although she had to head to the courthouse later that morning. Stacy assured she would return in time for the retirement party at the recent hotel. Despite knowing Bridget couldn't attend, it didn't delay the festivities, promising an enjoyable event. Tyson left right after lunch to handle several necessary tasks. By 3 that afternoon, everything was arranged. The final papers for the house were signed, and movers were already en route. Committed to finishing by late Saturday afternoon, once the move was completed, the cleaning crew Tyson had employed would arrive with instructions to finalize everything by that evening, with a bonus promised if they met the deadline. Realtors assured Tyson that the for sale sign would be in the front yard by late the next day, with a listing of interested parties ready to view the property starting the following Monday. Tyson had competitively priced the house to facilitate a quick sale. Tyson's last responsibility was ensuring all financial arrangements were in order. He and Bridget maintained 2 separate accounts aside from their joint ones, each with an individual credit card. Tyson insisted on carrying only 1 card each, disapproving of maintaining a credit balance. Bridget, adept at financial management, was never wasteful with funds and skillfully handled their accounts. She was aware of Tyson's private business accounts managed by his company, but was unaware of his accounts at the firm. Over the years, Bridget had neither inquired nor remembered. Upon retiring, Tyson closed all joint accounts bearing both their names and transferred the retirement funds to a new brokerage. Tyson planned to oversee all their combined financial matters and assets temporarily, at least until they were fully settled, since their new residence would be outside the United States. He had already transferred the accounts overseas and opened an online account with an international bank that had branches in Europe and South America. Tyson was certain that Bridget would adapt well to the change, considering her savvy financial acumen. Tyson had confirmed possession of the tickets and was looking forward to spending the next few months with Bridget at a stunning resort in Costa Rica, which offered sunshine, beaches, swimming, sailing, and horseback riding. After visiting the resort alone to ensure its legitimacy, Tyson instructed Rachel to secure the booking and make the necessary arrangements, aiming to have everything finalized by his retirement. Over the years, Tyson had accumulated considerable wealth from managing high-profile cases and charging premium fees. His clients valued his expertise and provided substantial retainers. He invested these earnings in high-risk ventures, which yielded significant returns. As a lawyer, he used his legal knowledge to transfer most of his wealth into offshore accounts legally, without any agreements with the US, keeping these funds intact and unknown to Bridget, adding an element of surprise. Importantly, this money was stored outside the US, not subject to American tax laws or judicial oversight. Despite Bridget suggesting he retire, which had been a topic of discussion over the past year, Tyson believed his retirement would delight her given her frequent remarks about the time he dedicated to his work. He told everyone it would be a surprise for Bridget, planning to reveal it on Sunday night upon her return. Everything had proceeded flawlessly. So far the party was a hit, with Tyson mingling and dancing with everyone, recounting engaging stories from their most notable cases. Jason stayed close to Tyson throughout the event, ensuring he missed nothing crucial. Tyson admired Jason for recognizing his importance to the firm. Stacy and Clay, fully informed of his plans and acting as his attorneys, were bound by confidentiality. During the event, Stacy expressed her enjoyment of Tyson's efforts. As they danced, Stacy confirmed that all preparations for the surprise were complete, including documenting checks and amounts to guarantee the success of Bridget's surprise and Tyson's satisfaction. Tyson felt assured that Bridget would love the surprise, to which Stacy responded with a slightly sarcastic agreement. Tyson chuckled and shared that he had secured tickets to a Costa Rican resort, planning to leave Sunday night. He promised to give Stacy a permanent contact number, but mentioned his new cell would be operational in the interim. He encouraged Roger and Stacy to consider taking a similar break, although Stacy replied that she was too engaged in her work to consider quitting at that time. Tyson then asked her to convey his apologies to Clay for not including him in all their plans. Tyson stayed at the party until nearly midnight. He missed Bridget's call but found a voicemail she left, informing him she would stay at her mother's that night and requested he not call there to avoid disturbing her mother, who needed rest. But Bridget promised to call the next night and asked Tyson to be home when she did. She wished him good night, and as Tyson expected, she didn't call back that night. After listening to her message, Tyson spent the evening packing his clothes and ensuring Bridget's belongings were also neatly packed, with limited time before Sunday night. He aimed to prevent the need for return trips after the movers finished the next day. Tyson decided to stay at the bungalow that night, planning to have all calls forwarded to his new cell starting tomorrow. Once he had transferred everything to the bungalow, Tyson completed his tasks, made a phone call to confirm the final part of the surprise was ready, and then went to bed. He was pleasantly tired from the party but felt anxious, hoping everything would proceed smoothly as he drifted off to sleep. Saturday was devoted to packing and moving furniture from their house. Although it was somewhat sad, Tyson shrugged it off and left the movers to their tasks. He headed back to the bungalow to meet his children, who were due to arrive around noon. Tyson needed to discuss his plans with them to avoid catching them off guard. He had hinted at his retirement, but hadn't disclosed details about Costa Rica or anything else. Now was the time to update them fully. He required them to promise not to contact Bridget and spoil the surprise, confident they would agree. When they arrived, he welcomed them inside, sat them down, and began explaining everything, keeping it concise and to the point. He answered all their questions and provided further details upon request. Neither Jake nor Tessa was pleased with his decisions, but he reassured them that their college tuition was secure and that they were always welcome, wherever home might be. He emphasized that his retirement was a mutual decision with Bridget, discussed and agreed upon as the right time. They wanted to speak to Bridget, but he convinced them to wait until Sunday night when she returned. Eventually, they agreed. That evening, they all went out for dinner and maintained a quiet demeanor when Tyson answered Bridget's 9 p.m. call. She was brief as usual and didn't mention extending her stay, so he still expected her back Sunday night. After the call, his kids revisited his plans, seeking confirmation that he still wanted to proceed. Tyson reassured them that he was resolved. When they retired to the spare room with twin beds, he made a phone call to confirm that the movers had finished, and the cleaning crew was scheduled. Both confirmations were affirmative, and Tyson was content. Sunday was a day when little needed to be done, and almost everything was prepared. He checked the house and found everything in order, left spotless by the movers and cleaners, and ready for showing. He drove back to the bungalow and waited for Bridget's call, anticipating it between 10 and 10:30 a.m. The kids had gone out to meet friends from home, leaving Tyson alone when she called. He answered after the first ring, nervously asking if she was ready to start for home. Bridget replied that she was just beginning to pack and requested a few more days to help her sister Bianca with some tasks. Her voice was tense, as if she anticipated his objection, well aware that he would be displeased. Tyson heard her request, and for the first time, he felt the anger he had suppressed for months rise to the surface. She wanted to extend her stay, and now he understood why. He had suspected for over 3 months, long enough to begin planning his surprise. Now was the time to confront the situation he had been preparing for. As he made this decision, his anger erupted, making it hard to speak without raising his voice. He responded sarcastically to Bridget's request, mentioning her spending a few more nights with her lover, Kevin. Tyson confronted her about her affairs with Kevin and another man, Ben, stating that it deeply upset him. His voice rose in anger as he struggled to keep calm. He accused her of maintaining these relationships for the past 6 months or more, expressing his frustration at having to pretend it was all normal. Silence ensued from the other end, broken only by a sob, and then the phone line went dead. Tyson stared at the phone in his hand, as if it were a venomous creature, realizing Bridget had hung up. This was an unexpected turn of events. Tyson finally set the troubling device down on the table, his hand shaking from the residual anger. She had hung up, and he found himself without an outlet for his pent-up frustration. Slumping into a chair beside the table, his phone rang sharply, its echo filling the room. The disposable phone he had purchased specifically for this purpose continued to ring, lacking voicemail functionality. Eventually he picked it up and pressed the top button, managing only a terse yes in response. His fury had dissipated with the abrupt end of the conversation. He had been ready for an argument, or even a shouting match, a confrontation between a betrayed husband and his unfaithful wife. Her sudden disconnection surprised him and quenched his anger as if doused by a bucket of water. Now, he felt nothing but numbness and a deep-seated pain that he had been repressing with his planned responses. Without a way to vent his anger and hurt, he felt powerless against the acute pain gripping his heart. Through the phone's tiny speaker, Bianca's angry voice emerged, urging Tyson not to disconnect, and expressing concern for Bridget, who was apparently distraught and nearly hysterical. She probed Tyson about his words to Bridget and what might have caused her extreme reaction. Redirecting his anger towards Bianca, whom he saw as complicit in Bridget's betrayal, he sarcastically informed her that he had merely suggested Bridget stay longer to spend more time with her lover, Kevin Clark. Tyson accused both Bianca and Bridget of involvement with Ben Stinson and Kevin, detailing their rendezvous at a motel. He restrained himself from yelling at Bianca and dismissed her plea for him to let Bridget explain. Bianca attempted to defend Bridget, insisting it was not as Tyson believed and describing the situation as a foolish mistake for which she held equal blame. She implored Tyson not to take drastic actions and to wait for Bridget to speak with him directly. However, Tyson remained resolute, revealing that someone would be present when Bridget returned, but it would not be him. He accused Bridget of abandoning their marriage and wanting to continue her affair with Kevin. Despite Bianca's pleas, Tyson informed her that he had already told the children about the situation, including the weekends when Bridget claimed to be caring for her mother. He noted that the children had responded surprisingly well to the news. In response to Bianca's desperate plea for hope and reconsideration, Tyson reiterated that it was Bridget and Bianca who had forsaken their family. Tyson bid farewell to Bianca and made a passing remark about saying goodbye to her mother, noting that she had never liked him and was probably rejoicing at the situation. He then disconnected the call and surveyed the small bungalow one last time, thinking to himself that Bridget would love it. He chuckled at the thought, turned off all the lights, left the spare keys on the table along with a letter for Bridget, and exited through the front door. He locked the door behind him, got into his rental car, and drove to Rachel's apartment. Rachel was waiting outside the building as he arrived. He got out, helped her load 3 suitcases into the back of the car, and held the door for her as she climbed in. She smiled at him as he shut the car door. He walked around to the driver's side, slid in, and Rachel voiced her readiness for their new beginning, mentioning the difficulty of seeing him every day at the firm without being able to touch or talk to him. She thanked Bridget for pushing Tyson away, allowing her to step in and enjoy their time together. As they drove away, Rachel shared that when she had called Tyson to inquire if he minded her staying a few more days, she had a nagging feeling it might not be a wise decision. Rachel shared her discussion with Bianca, who found humor in the idea of spending additional nights with Kevin and Ben. Rachel acknowledged a fleeting sense of guilt when reflecting on her time with them, but this was quickly overshadowed by her excitement. She reminisced about the thrill of her encounters with Kevin and Ben, feeling a shiver as she picked up the phone. The conversation began typically, with Ty asking if she was coming home. His voice was so normal, reminding her of a world Ty knew nothing about, which bolstered her courage to pursue what she desired. She asked if he would mind if she stayed a couple more days. Glancing at Bianca and seeing her reassuring grin, she felt validated in her decision. As she awaited his standard response to do whatever made her happy, she thought again that Ty wouldn't mind and would never discover her actual activities because revealing them would cause him too much pain. She loved Ty genuinely, but the intimacy between them had waned. Now, she had found a way to maintain her love for her husband while seeking fulfillment elsewhere. Discovering a side of herself she never knew existed, she was fully immersed in the excitement and pleasure it brought. Pleased with herself and driven by her desires, she contemplated spending just 1 or 2 more nights with Kevin and Ben. She was already imagining their night together, feeling a warmth at the thought, until Ty's words through the speaker hit her like a blow, shattering her world. Ty questioned why he should not be concerned about Bridget wanting to spend more nights with her lover, Kevin, and mentioned her involvement with both him and another man, Ben. He expressed uncertainty about how long this had been happening, wondering if it had been 6 months or more. He shared his frustration about feeling expected to pretend it was all insignificant. Bridget couldn't reply to Ty's accusations. Paralyzed with fear and panic, she abruptly ended the call with a loud sob, just one, all she could muster before realizing the gravity of her situation. Oh God, he knew, and my life was ruined. I was about to lose the only man I ever loved. She knew she had to get home immediately to confront the situation before he could take drastic actions. Grabbing her car keys, she rushed out of Bianca's kitchen, started her car, and sped toward the interstate, headed home. Normally a 3.5 to 4 hour drive, she pushed her car as fast as it would go, indifferent to any potential police presence or speed limits. She needed to reach home before it was too late to reconcile. She planned to tell him that she loved him and had made a foolish, selfish mistake that meant nothing. Kevin and Ben were already out of the picture, and she would never see them or Bianca again. She rehearsed the words she would use to persuade him not to end their relationship. Seduced by Bianca's lifestyle and the distance growing in her intimacy with Ty, she had been convinced that letting herself go with someone else would rekindle her desire and ultimately benefit their relationship. Caught up in the thrill of the forbidden, she hoped it would invigorate her and carry over into her marriage. She was confident that Ty would listen. 100 miles into her journey, she pondered the question Ty would likely ask: why hadn't any of that renewed desire affected their intimacy in the past 6 months? It was a question for which she had no immediate answer, and she struggled to formulate one as she pulled into their driveway, surprised to see 4 cars parked there. I recognized the 2 cars belonging to my children and was surprised to see them there. Almost immediately, a sense of dread overwhelmed me. I drove around the cars onto the grass, came to a stop, and hurried out of my car, running toward the house. As I approached, I saw someone exit one of the unfamiliar cars and move to intercept me at the front door. I ignored the man and reached for my keys, attempting to unlock the door, but my key wouldn't work. I tried repeatedly to no avail. Frustrated and defeated, I dropped the key on the porch, covered my face with my hands, and began to cry. Turning back to the door, I started pounding on it with my fists until the pain forced me to stop. I looked around to see the man who had approached me earlier still standing there. He asked if I was Mrs. Tyson Summers, and I nodded. Yes. He handed me an envelope, speaking softly. "You are served, madam." He then produced a smaller envelope, handing it to me. "These are the keys to your new residence. The address is inside and the property is yours free of any debts. You will find the deed and other necessary details inside." I took both envelopes and stared blankly at him, overwhelmed with sadness and pain. He then reached into his coat pocket and handed me a legal-sized white envelope, explaining, "This contains several checks totaling the amount from the current savings and checking accounts which have been closed. This house has been listed for sale and the proceeds will be yours once the sale is completed. All of this is detailed in the divorce documents and the terms are clearly outlined." The man closed his briefcase and prepared to leave. He produced a business card from his jacket pocket. "In case you've forgotten, this is the name of your husband's attorney." He walked away and got into his car, speaking briefly to someone in the other, unfamiliar car before driving off. Stunned, I held the envelopes he had given me. Glancing down at the business card, I saw the name Stacy Reinhardt. A jolt of anger surged through me but quickly subsided. I had used Stacy's name over the years to make Ty feel guilty, though I knew it was all in my head. I looked up to see her approaching. "Hello, Bridget. You're not looking so well today. I just wanted to give you a heads up. T asked me to handle things in his absence, in case you have any questions." She continued, "First, Ty retired effective Friday. We all had a party for him. It was a great turnout. Too bad you missed it. But you had other priorities, didn't you? Second, this house has been turned over to a realtor for sale. You signed a power of attorney some time ago. And Ty used it to transfer the title into his name. However, don't worry, the proceeds are all yours. Ty also bought you a nice bungalow, fully paid and furnished. Your children can take you there. Lastly, Ty gave me full authority to act on his behalf in the divorce and all his affairs here in the States. T has left the country and does not plan to return for some time." She stood watching me as I absorbed each piece of information, each one hammering deeper into my heart. Almost gasping for breath from the sudden collapse of my life, I opened my mouth to ask questions, but no words came out. I realized the enormity of my actions. I had blindly betrayed and disrespected the only man I could truly love, and now I had lost his love, leaving me with no idea how to proceed. Suddenly I felt more isolated than I had been in the last 2 decades. Although my children were still in my life, the foundation of everything I valued had departed. I had never experienced such solitude. "I can't comprehend why you did this to Tyson, Bridget. From my 15 years of working with him, I know he cherished you and your children more than anything. When he discovered your actions, it nearly broke him," Roger informed me. Roger and I supported him through this ordeal, ensuring he remained composed enough to strategize appropriately. We prevented him from making any rash decisions. For your information, he considered harming himself, but we dissuaded him by reminding him of your children. Being with someone else has also aided his recovery from the turmoil you caused. It's irrelevant who she is, what matters is that she's there for him as he navigates this situation. Tyson has resolved not to speak with you, and he is indifferent to whether you contest the divorce. That matter will be handled by me, not him. Just understand, Tyson has exited your life, and he's not coming back. She then turned, walked to her car without a backward glance, entered the passenger side, and the car drove off. I walked slowly down the driveway towards my children, who were grouped together beside the cars. I had to confront them and endure their anger and disapproval, but by then I no longer cared. I had betrayed my husband, their father, and lost him, and nothing else seemed significant. Their anger could not inflict more pain than Ty's words that morning. Oh, how they stung! He had merely stated what he believed to be true. As I approached Jake and Tessa, my grief brought me to my knees. Jake helped me to stand, but his face showed no concern, only anger, disgust, and disappointment. That indifference hurt, and I started to sob. Instead of comforting me, my daughter stood before me with her arms crossed, her expression a reflection of her brother's. I had convinced myself that nothing could be more painful after losing Ty and my marriage, but the expressions on my children's faces conveyed their clear judgment of my actions, and it felt even worse. I wept for all that I had lost as they stood by, offering no comfort. I had lost them too. I turned for one last look at the family home we had built together. I had always felt pride returning to that house, but now it was all gone: my husband, my marriage, the love of my children, and our shared home. What had I done? Why had I never contemplated the consequences of my actions? Why had I never considered them? After being friends for almost a year, I realized my wife was the woman I wanted to know better and possibly spend the rest of my life with, so I asked her to be my girlfriend, and she said yes. We began dating, and our affection for each other soared. We seemed like the perfect couple, often wearing matching outfits, doing activities together, gifting each other, and I tried my best to keep her happy. I was earning well, so buying her gifts was easy. She loved fashion, and I knew exactly what types of clothes, shoes, and bags she favored. Whenever possible, I took her shopping to buy whatever she desired, because her happiness brought me joy too. We dated for a year before she moved in with me, and after 2 years of dating, we got married. One reason I asked my wife to move in while we were still dating was that I traveled a lot, and since my apartment was larger and more comfortable than hers, it made sense. It wouldn't have made sense for me to lock up the apartment, travel frequently, and still pay rent after we got married. We had no reason to move since we weren't planning on having kids anytime soon, and I had grown to love the neighborhood and the few friends I had made there. They provided a sense of community, and I didn't want to lose that. During our dating period, my wife also became friends with some of the neighbors, and their friendship strengthened even further after we were married. The first 3 years of our marriage were wonderful. We treated each other with love and respect. On weekends, we would host or attend small gatherings with the neighbors, and we got along well with everyone. Even though my job required me to travel for business, I never considered being unfaithful. I always carried your picture in my wallet and in my car for several reasons. I never thought my wife would cheat on me either, as I believed I fulfilled her needs, provided for her well, and treated her as a husband should. Our life seemed perfect until one day everything changed, which ultimately damaged the relationship I shared with my wife. I had been away on a 4-day business trip, and upon my return, I noticed my wife was a bit edgy. She wasn't cold, just slightly off, which made me suspicious. Initially, I thought maybe she had accidentally broken a family vase that my father had passed down to me, but it was still intact. To determine what was wrong, I checked our home security camera footage, only to find that the recordings from the days I was away were missing. It was apparent she had deleted them, which heightened my suspicions. I chose not to confront her immediately, as I knew she would try to convince me otherwise. Instead, I quietly worked on recovering the deleted files. When I successfully retrieved them, I was shocked to see explicit videos of my wife and a new neighbor we had recently welcomed warmly into our home. The most shocking part was that I hadn't suspected anything was happening between them. I had thought my wife was just being friendly, as she was with other neighbors. Discovering their affair in our own bed and on the parlor couch infuriated me. Unlike the typical heartbreak, I felt rage and wanted to confront her aggressively. Before my trip, I had planned a neighborhood barbecue to welcome this new neighbor, who, unbeknownst to me, was involved with my wife. With this new information, I thought of a perfect plan to expose the affair. My wife was unaware that I knew about her infidelity. I maintained my composure and acted as if everything was normal until the day of the party. After everyone had enjoyed the food and drinks, we gathered to watch a movie. Instead of the expected film, I played the videos I had recovered of my wife and the new neighbor. The shock was palpable. My wife was horrified, unable to believe what was unfolding, especially as I watched with a grim satisfaction. The neighbor's girlfriend was outraged, breaking up with him on the spot. After the revelation, my wife was distraught and sought comfort from our neighbors, but they were too disappointed to offer her any support. Once everyone had seen the evidence, I declared the barbecue over, and they all left. Left alone, my wife attempted to explain, but I was too angry to listen and yelled at her not to set foot in our house again. I also informed her that I was already processing the divorce papers and that she would soon hear from my lawyer. I discarded some of her belongings and firmly closed the door. Publicly humiliating her did soothe me slightly, but it paled in comparison to the heartbreak I endured. I had loved her deeply and imagined spending our lives together. After that day, I never saw her again, and the new neighbor left as well. I assume he took her with him, because they both knew they had destroyed their relationships with our neighbors. We eventually divorced, and despite everything, I found myself wishing she would be unhappy. This ordeal occurred 5 years ago, and although I've moved on, the fear of my current girlfriend cheating still troubles me deeply. I strive to suppress these feelings as much as possible, but it's hard not to feel cynical about love, believing that most women are selfish and only think of themselves. I know it's a tough situation to endure infidelity and then expose it so dramatically. It's crucial to try to move past such experiences so they don't impair future relationships. Not everyone is the same, and not everyone will repeat the mistakes of others. Seeking professional help can be a beneficial step towards recovery. Story 3 begins with my wife and I meeting in college, where we instantly connected. We were inseparable, always ready for an adventure. After graduation, we started to build our dream life together, including welcoming a little bundle of joy, for whom we strive to provide the best. Fast forward a few years, and things are going well. We have a beautiful home, great friends, and both hold amazing jobs, creating a picture-perfect life. Moreover, our daughter's teacher mentioned her natural talent for the piano, making the decision to foster her love for music an easy one. On a neighbor's recommendation, we hired a recent music school graduate to teach her piano after school. He came every Monday and Wednesday, and by the time I arrived home, he was usually just finishing up. However, a few weeks into his employment, I noticed changes in my wife. She seemed distant, her smiles forced, and something felt off. Initially, I thought it might be work stress, but the feeling persisted. My suspicions were aroused when I saw her receive a text message from the piano instructor, which she read secretly, and then left the room to respond. Rather than make accusations, I decided to investigate how she interacted with him. I started coming home earlier, noticing prolonged, seemingly intimate conversations and frequent, meaningful glances between them. Their body language suggested something more was happening. Determined to find proof, I purchased tiny security cameras and installed them in strategic locations around our home, one in the living room by the piano, one in the kitchen, and one in the kitchen, and one in our bedroom while my wife was out grocery shopping. It didn't take long for these cameras to capture revealing evidence. I reviewed the security footage, and it was unmistakably clear. My wife greeted the piano instructor, and they started the lesson with my daughter. After an hour, she sent our daughter to another room to play, saying the lesson was over. She then led the instructor into the kitchen where they kissed and embraced and engaged in more, thinking they were completely alone. That footage was all I needed to confirm that a divorce was inevitable. It was the last outcome I desired, but I couldn't overlook her actions and act as if nothing had happened. I was deeply hurt, angry, and confused by her behavior. Perhaps I shouldn't have taken the following steps, but I felt compelled to get some form of retribution. We had a dinner planned with some friends and neighbors. It was supposed to be a big gathering, with all the kids next door with a sitter, while we adults enjoyed some drinks and relaxed. It seemed like the perfect opportunity to reveal what I had discovered about my wife. Before the dinner, I made sure to invite our piano instructor, who initially declined but agreed to come after thinking he might secure some new clients. During the dinner, while spirits were high, I stood and made a toast. I turned to my wife and expressed how relieved I was to have uncovered her true character. I mentioned that staying married to her for another 20+ years would have been unbearable. She appeared hurt and confused. I then clarified that I could not remain married to someone unfaithful. The room fell silent, and she looked at me, clearly unaware of what I was about to disclose. I elaborated further, revealing her affair with the piano instructor. I displayed the video on my phone for everyone to see. The guests were shocked and quickly began to leave, leaving my wife and me alone in the house. She questioned how I found out, and I explained everything. She admitted the affair was a mistake and hadn't intended for it to go as far as it did, then pleaded for another chance. I stood by my decision and advised her to expect divorce papers. The neighbor who had recommended the instructor later called to apologize, feeling partly responsible. He had dismissed the instructor and contacted others he had referred to warn them, expecting the instructor would lose those positions as well. In an effort to maintain stability and normalcy for our daughter, I decided to let my wife keep the house, although she still has a substantial mortgage to pay off on her own without any financial support from me. We agreed on custody arrangements and pledged to remain as cordial as possible for our daughter's benefit. Your story underscores the complexities of personal relationships and the critical importance of communication. Opting to publicly expose the infidelity and pursue a divorce illustrates the emotional toll such situations can carry. Nevertheless, your commitment to your child's welfare in this trying time is admirable.